I think all of us today would say we want our group to thrive. Like, hey man, that's the goal, isn't it? To have a small group that is just functioning at maximum capacity. And really when you think about thriving, I think of one word. I think of leadership. You know, we are all here today because we are leaders. And, you know, when you think about leadership, there are books upon books upon books upon books on leadership. People defining leadership in different ways. But you know what? When I define leadership, I like to go to the book, which is God's Word. And I always go to 1 Corinthians, just one verse, chapter 11, verse 1, where Paul says this. He says, "Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." And what's interesting about this is Paul is inviting people to follow him. And ultimately, as a small group leader, that's what you're doing, is you're inviting people to follow you as their leader. And it's honestly the same thing Jesus did with his disciples when he said, hey, come follow me. Come follow my example. And ultimately, I mean, leadership really is the key priority to your group thriving. John Maxwell says it like this. He says, everything rises and falls with leadership. You know where that puts the pressure today? On us. On you sitting at your table. Because you are the leaders. Your group will rise and fall based on you as the leader. And I hope you take that seriously. I hope you really grasp that. I just want you to understand this. In order for your group to thrive, your personal development must thrive. Man, I pray that you don't take that lightly today. That in order for your group to truly thrive, you have to thrive. You have to thrive because you can't lead anybody anywhere you've never been before. You have a leadership capacity today. And that capacity, whether it's 5 or 10, if it's not growing, you will limit your group based off your leadership. And so you have to make it a priority in your life to say, hey, as a leader, I need to make it a priority to develop myself. See, the hardest person, you know, when you think of leading groups, man, you can think of some people where you're like, man, they are just tough cookies. They're hard to lead. But you know what the truth is today? The hardest and most important person that you lead is you. It's you. Because that will determine whether your group thrives or not. So today, I'm going to rush through these because the number just turned red. So I'm losing track of time. So 3 things. 3 ways to really grow yourself. The first one, look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. And I don't mean the actual mirror. I mean God's Word. You know, God's Word is referred to as a mirror. Because what's amazing about this book is it will show you who you truly are. It's got this amazing ability. If you spend time in it, it will show you your weaknesses. It will show you where you lack in your leadership. So take a good long look in the mirror of God's Word, because as we spend time in this book, it just grows our leadership capacity. The second thing, seek accountability. Don't be afraid to allow people to speak critically into your leadership. It's not the most fun and exciting thing about leadership, but it will make you better. It will really make you better. If you meet with other group leaders and say, hey, what are you guys doing? And hey, could you sit in on our group and tell me how I can lead better? Seek accountability. People who are going to coach you and tell you, hey, if you just did this, if you adjusted that, it'd make you a better leader today. Seek accountability. And then finally, embrace a higher standard. Man, set the bar high for yourselves. Don't be afraid to dream. Man, I think sometimes as leaders, we fail to dream and hope. And today I want to inspire you to dream, to hope, to set the bar really high. Because at the end of the day, if you only set the bar here, this is where you limit your leadership in your group. And so I'm excited for this year, and the reason why I'm excited is because of all of you. You guys are amazing, and I just hope I get to tell you that all the time, how amazing you are. You are a group of people who give people a place who are new to God, who are new to Jesus, a place to stick, connect, and grow. And so I am just really grateful for you.
Well, okay, so we've been talking about Thrive. It's our theme for tonight, Thrive, how groups grow. So everything we talk about, whether in here, especially our breakouts, are really going to be centered on this theme of how do groups grow, how do they thrive. And one of the things as coaches, we want to do all that we can to help you as leaders thrive. We want to do all that we can to help you and your group to thrive. And usually, so one of the things that we kind of look for as leaders and we discuss, or as coaches, when we're out talking to you as leaders and visiting your groups, we kind of look for some indicators that help us kind of know whether a group really is thriving or not. And those indicators, actually, it's on page 6. Sorry, I should have said that earlier. Go ahead and turn there. There'll be some notes here. You can follow along with us. Page 6. But the two indicators to us that kind of help us understand whether a group is really doing well, that it's a healthy group, the first indicator is this, the spiritual growth of the members. That the members of that group are actually growing spiritually, that they're taking steps, that they're being open, they're being honest with their group members, and that it's not just a group that's kind of like flatlined or they're spiritually stagnant, but like the members of that group are actually growing in their relationship with Christ. So that's the first indicator. The second indicator then is this, the numerical growth of the group. That's a key indicator to us that that group is thriving, that it's healthy, that over the course of time, that group is adding new people, that the circle is just getting a little bit bigger. But those are really the two indicators that we look for as coaches that help us see if a group is really thriving or not. Spiritual growth of the members, numerical growth of the group. And these two indicators really come right out of our mission as a church, which is to make more and better followers of Jesus. Right? There's no secret. We talk about that all the time. Everything we do here at Northridge Church is all about making more and better followers of Jesus. And our community groups play an incredibly vital role at helping us pursue that mission as a group so that groups can be thriving, that they are healthy.
Absolutely. And just as there are two growth indicators, we also believe that there are two corollary growth inhibitors. We would call these maybe two common myths that we see at play. And when we see a group that is not thriving or a person that doesn't seem to want to embrace groups, we think that often one of these two myths is at play. And the first myth simply says this. It says that groups are only about relationships. They're not about deep faith. Groups are only about relationships. They're good for connecting believers together, but they're not really great for developing long-term faith. They don't really help people grow deep in their faith, this myth would say. The second myth is sort of on the opposite end of the spectrum, and it says this, that groups are only about going deeper. They're only about going deeper in your faith. We call this sort of the Bible study mentality, that every time a group of believers gets together, it has to be a Bible study. What else would it be? This myth might say, I've grown beyond my relational need for all that touchy-feely stuff. I just need to go deep in the Word. This myth might say, well, some Christians need to be propped up by all that relational stuff. I don't really need that. I just need more truth. This myth says that attaining knowledge is really paramount and really equals maturity as a Christian. And we think both of these myths are dangerous extremes, if we're not careful, that can hinder a community group from really thriving. But you see, we truly believe that it's not one or the other, that to grow deep in your faith and to connect relationally, they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to sacrifice one to get the other. We believe, in fact, that you can't really accomplish either one of those ends very well unless you're accomplishing both.
Yeah, and the truth is groups can and should do both. And one of the things we've kind of learned when it comes to spiritual growth is that you cannot grow spiritually unless you connect relationally. It's kind of a foundational principle when it comes to growth. You can't grow spiritually unless you connect relationally. And community groups here at Northridge Church, they help us on a very large scale to be able to connect people to other people who will spiritually influence them, who will help them grow in their relationship with Christ. So we want to talk just briefly about what that looks like, specifically in the context of more and better. What does more and better look like within the context of community groups? And let's start by just talking about the more. Well, I think one of the most important things, the first things we ought to consider is the welcoming environment. That welcoming environment plays a huge part on the more side of things. And I think on a couple different levels. First of all, to insiders. And when I say insiders, I mean those who are current members of your group. Because if your current members don't feel comfortable with the atmosphere within your group, it's going to be very unlikely that they're going to invite that person in, they meet for the first time in the lobby on Sunday to come check your group out, because they might feel a little bit nervous about how that might go over and what they might feel like. So how do your insiders feel about the environment of your group? And this is where those feedback forms are really helpful to you. This is why we encourage you at the end of every trimester, hand out those feedback forms, because it allows you to take the temperature of your group and to see how do your group members really feel about your group, and it perhaps can reveal some of the gaps that you can work on as a leader. But not only to insiders, but also to outsiders. So if someone for the very first time does come to your group, are they going to feel safe? Are they going to feel welcomed? Are they going to feel like, man, okay, this mattered to me. I felt like I was heard. I felt like it was a safe place, and they want to come back. So I think we got to consider the environment when it comes to considering the more side of things with groups.
Absolutely, and a welcoming environment is absolutely crucial, but also, and I think maybe even more importantly, would be inviting. The actual invitation, making that invitation. We've run some statistics here at Northridge Church, and we've discovered that 100% of the people you don't invite will never show up to your group, right? I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a good stat. And, inviting, personal invitation is the most powerful way to attract new people to your group. And Nate touched on it just a moment ago, but where do you find these people to invite? That's a common question, and we think there's some good answers to that question. One great place to find people to invite is in the lobby on Sunday morning or in the auditorium on Sunday morning, because Northridge Church is a pi-squared church. We live pi-squared lives intentionally. That means, and you know it's true, that there are always new people around here. At all of our campuses, there are always new people coming through the doors, and we know that those new people will simply not stick long term unless they land in a group. And so, man, a couple questions that we encourage you to ask whenever you meet a new person. How long have you been at Northridge? And do you have a group? Have you gotten into a group? So that lobby encounter or that auditorium encounter is very important. And also, those that you serve alongside, some of them may not yet be in group, and rubbing shoulders with them provides a natural environment to make that invitation. And then also, occasionally, we as coaches will email you names of people that have indicated interest in being a part of a community group. Those people are prime. Those people have already indicated an interest, and we think that it would be great if you guys would make sure you follow them up and do it in a personal way. The most personal way you can do that, whether that's face-to-face on a Sunday or a phone call, is also very good. An email might not be the best, but a phone call or a text might get the job done very, very well. So inviting and, a great environment and then inviting, those two together create, we think, a great opportunity for the more to happen. But it's not only about the more, it's also about the better. We really believe that groups ought to be a vehicle through which people grow deeply in their faith. This starts with identifying where everyone is at in your group. So it really starts with you as a leader, identifying person by person, where are each of these people at? Because you know very well which people in your group are poised for leadership, which people in your group are mature in their faith. You also know those in your group that are really struggling to obey God in a certain area or with their attitude. You know those who haven't yet been baptized. You know those who maybe haven't even crossed that line of faith. And so as a leader, having that awareness of where they're at, and then, secondly, to encourage them to identify what their next step might be. And then just after that, think about helping them set a goal in that area. So encourage them to identify their next step and then set a goal. For example, we think a great goal for someone in your group with a lot of faith questions would be to join our starting point environment on a Sunday morning. That's just one example, but what we're going to do this trimester, something new that we've not done before. On your table, you'll see a little stack of cards that we're calling growth cards. And we would love it if each of you as a leader would take a small stack of those cards and you would use those to, perhaps on the first night of the trimester, distribute those and talk about the kinds of goals that and next steps that your group members might think about accomplishing in that trimester. We would really love to see every person, including those of us in this room, take a next step sometime in this next trimester. And so we're encouraging you to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, a great example of this. Two of the leaders that I coach, Marty and Kristen Jameson, at the start of the fall trimester, they looked around at their group and they realized that there was an opportunity there. They looked at the members of their group and realized that none of the people in their group weren't serving anywhere, or the majority weren't serving anywhere. And so as leaders, they kind of felt burdened about that. And so on their own, they took the initiative to talk about it within their group and say, hey, we want to encourage, if you're not plugged in or you haven't served anywhere at Northridge Church, to just take that step. Shadow in an area, test drive in an area to see if that might be an area where you can begin to contribute to the ministry of Northridge Church. And so over the course of the fall trimester, they followed up with the members of their group, and they actually began to see people within their group, they began to plug in and they began to start serving. And I love the initiative that they took, totally on their own. That's where this idea even comes from, of them as leaders seeing a need and an opportunity, stepping up and leading in that and encouraging the members of the group to take the step, one of those steps just being serving. And I loved that. And here's what's so important is that we got to be leading out as leaders. So if we're not leading out as leaders, whether it's the prayer requests that we share or us taking active steps in our faith, we can't expect those within our group to follow us. So I think it's important that we gotta think through that and identify where are the areas that we can grow in our lives, but then also encourage that within the members of our group.
Absolutely. We really do believe it's true that you can't grow spiritually unless you're connecting relationally. And if we as a church want to continue to see more and better followers of Jesus made, it's going to happen best as our community groups thrive.